So what if I told you that this photo isn't just one photo, but it's actually 3 in one composite? Hello, my name is Juan Padilla, and this is the Shot Breakdown. Just a little context for this shoot. It was shot at the San Francisco City Hall, an iconic place that a lot of quinceañeras like to do their photo shoot there. It has 4 stories, and each story is just as nice as the first. So for this shot, we chose the grand staircase. That way we can give them enough room so they can all spread out. I wanted to showcase the details of every dress without it being too complicated with lighting setups. So we chose to go a simple 1 light setup. Each girl was lit individually as I held the camera steady. A more practical technique would be to have a tripod, set up your settings, and then just take the photo as the person holding the light moves from model to model. But we didn't have that, so I just held the camera steady at my eye and I told Abby to move after I took the shot. And for the settings for this shot, it was shot at a 2.8 f-stop with a 1/160 shutter speed and an ISO of 800. When taking these shots, I like to use as much ambient light as possible and then just add a little kick with my light just because I want to still make it look natural, right? I feel like when the photos start looking too flashy, then people understand that there's something not right with the image, right? Your brain identifies that right away. Even though the images are still beautiful, I feel like having a more natural look adds to the beauty of it, to the painterly look, right? And that's the look that we're going for in this image. Something very important to keep in mind as the light is being moved from model to model, it always needs to come from the same direction. And now why do we need to do that? It's because it needs to look, again, as natural as possible. So imagine that there was one large light source that illuminated each model. If the light source were to come from different angles for each model, it will take away from the illusion of it being a natural light source. So we have to keep that in mind when posing, throughout the whole setup of the shot, that the light is going to come from one direction, and you need to tell the person that is holding the light, like, just make sure that as much as possible, just try to keep that light coming from the same direction for each individual person. Now time for the technical breakdown. So for the shot, we used a Sony A7III. It's an older camera, but it is the camera that we use for all of our shoots, and a 16-35 millimeter lens with the f-stop of 2.8 and a Geekoto softbox. We always like to use large softboxes for that nice soft painterly light, and it was a 36-inch, and that strobe and that softbox was on the monopod. That way the light can be moved quickly from model to model. And that's how we got the shot. Now the next part, which is super important, of course, is the editing. How did we edit this shot to get this look? And that was Abby. Abby did the editing for this shot, so here she comes.
Now it's time for editing. I'm the one that usually does the majority of the editing for pre-event sessions and the event day. The first round of editing is in Camera Raw, and this is where I do a lot of like the color correction and, bringing up the shadows and softening out the whites and the highlights just so it looks a little bit more painterly. The most important thing that I do in Camera Raw is with the cropping and the straightening of the image. So what I do is I go into the geometry tab of Camera Raw and I use the guided tool so I can make my 4 lines so that the image is completely straight. And it has to be consistent with all 3 of the images to make it really easy in Photoshop. Once I bring those pictures into Photoshop, I choose a base image, and usually that's the one where it's the easiest to remove me out of the image. That is the base image, and I just mask around everything else, and I make it look like I'm not even there. So that's the basic kind of rundown of how I do the editing. If you want more of a breakdown or a video just dedicated to how I edit with composites, we can definitely do that. But for this one, it's just a little bit of like an overview. So lots of masking, the guided tool, and just making sure that everything is nice and even. But the majority of what makes the image is what's done before editing, like while we're on the location and taking the pictures. So just making sure that your light source is coming from the same direction so that it's a lot easier to do that in Photoshop and we don't have to like lift any shadows or anything like that. So anyway, that's all when it goes to the editing. Moving on.
And just some final thoughts. I think what really makes this image is the composition. If you see how the girls are in a triangle and then how the stairs are also leading up, and including the lights, And adding a CTO gel to our light source makes it almost feel like these are the lights that are lighting the subject. And that's another little tip. Always try to match the color temperature of your light source in the photo, just to give it that extra little touch of realism. If there was one thing that I could improve in this image, I think it would be for the model on the bottom left-hand corner to let her breathe a little bit more. Or maybe just back her up a little bit. That way each model and each dress can shine in this image and everyone having their own little space. But other than that, it was a great photo that works well with the composition, the lighting, and the posing. Let us know what you think. Thank you so much.